welcome to the Punky Marketing Podcast. Today, I have a special guest. We're going to talk about the intersection of product value and go-to-market messaging in B2B. And I'm inviting you to join me in welcoming Erica Jenkins to the podcast. Erica, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. It's great to be here.
Thank you for joining me. I think we have a unique thing here, and it's the sunny in both places. We are not close demographically.
No, we are on two opposite sides of a very large ocean.
Exactly. So maybe we can start it off with you telling us a little bit about your experience and what have you been working on. Because looking at your bio and following you on LinkedIn, you've been doing a lot of stuff with different kind of companies and tackling a lot of different things.
Yeah, it's been a journey. Let's rewind to 2005. We'll go back that far. So I fell into technology on accident. So actually my background is in sales and marketing, and I had a business problem where I was trying to generate leads, and it was early days of blogs and forums and things of that nature. And I had a real estate company. So that's how I was generating business, was through content. That then birthed a startup idea. So I co-founded and bootstrapped a social media management platform called Expion. And for those of you who are in the marketing suites, we would compete with Hootsuite or Sprinkler or Sprout. And that would help large enterprise B2C companies like Coca-Cola and Mondelez launch all of their digital and social campaigns. And then, of course, measuring that and talking to customers. That was acquired in 2015. That was completely bootstrapped. So there was a lot of long hours and wearing multiple hats. You never did the same thing twice, it felt like. And then I took over as the chief product officer for a company called Sysmos. So that was a new use case of social listening. They were known for that type of platform. They would compete with Brandwatch and Crimson Hexagon. And we put together a full platform that was acquired again in 2018 by Meltwater. And so Meltwater purchased wanting to have a marketing solution in their tool set. And I stayed there for several years, did a little short stop off at another company about 18 months ago in social intelligence and sales enablement. So it was using online data in a different way. And then I have since been talking with lots of startups, Series A and Series B companies, and really helping them with sort of product optimization, fine-tuning their messaging, doing a lot of mentoring with first-time founders through the Founder Institute program. And it's just really interesting to see somebody who has an idea or a company that's got product market fit. There's a lot of problems they all have that are very similar. They're just at different stages of figuring out their solutions. So it's been a fun ride.
Yeah, definitely. As I'm listening to it, but I think we all get the biggest value about working with diversity or different set of companies from different stages, and they all have specific problems. And I always like going back to that, usually they go and they look at the bigger companies competitive in that space, and they say, I want to be the new, I don't know, Accenture or whatever it is. And I'm like, do you know how big they actually are? And do you really think that they have been doing the same things that they do today back in the days when they were just starting?
30, 40, 50 years of many, many lessons. And the world is not the same today as it was even 10 years ago. It's dramatically different.
Exactly. I was just on a podcast as a guest this time, and one of the questions was what changed in B2B, and I'm like, the way we buy it changed so much in the last couple of years because internet matured and we behave in a different way, and it transferred to the way we actually buy.
Let's say 10 years ago, I was at a trade show, I think about every 6 weeks. That felt like the way that you were trying to find business. I haven't stepped foot on a trade show floor now for, pre-pandemic, probably. I'd go back probably 4 years. But yeah, I agree with you. It's not the same thing. And there's so many other pieces of information that go into that buying decision. If it's G2 reviews, if you're seeing somebody on LinkedIn talk about solutions that they're interested in, you see the companies themselves trying to figure out what they are. You can look at a website and scratch your head and still have no idea what they do. It's just information overload. I can't imagine trying to make purchasing decisions right now. That would be tough.
This is interesting, actually. Think about it when I go to LinkedIn and then I see how there's information overload, there's everything, and then they say, basically you just need to close the existing demand. But you have so many similar products, everybody uses the same technologies. Like, why would they choose you?
Right.
You know, and that takes us back always to the foundation and how we lay down the foundation. And I think, you know, that can be the thing we can talk about a little bit. Usually, you know, companies say, we have complex problems, we need to have complex campaigns. But when the problem comes up, you know, they usually call marketing, you know, come and solve the problem. Marketing needs to come in, not where it's urgency to sell or to solve specific problem. It's when you do well, and then you need to take that to another level. And when we come into the company, we usually see that the solutions are in solving the foundations of the company, of the product. How did you set up the culture, the whole organizational structure, and everything else.
Yeah, you just made me think about something really interesting. There's two flavors of positioning that I see. There is definitely in the earlier stage of sort of a B2B SaaS company, it's still very heavy on features and functionality. So I see more talks about workflows, or, you know, you can export this content and pipe it into somewhere else for whatever use case you want, versus the more mature companies really lead with, you know, I owe them the power of three. They lead with the three most important things that a customer would gain from using their solution. And then there's always that muddy water in between. But I think that's part of the maturity curve of sort of go to market. And some of that comes with people like myself. So, you know, there are product managers and product management leaders who always stay in the technical lane, right? This is how we're going to do it. It's a little too much into the sausage making of how the product will be built. And they don't really get into the shoes of the prospect and the customer. And I think that's something in my field we have to mature, but it also means that we have to be communicating with our marketing counterparts. You know, I can come up and say, I want to save our customers an hour a day of redundant tasks, but then that's marketing needs to make that sound really flashy, but real, right? Don't lie.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be deceptive. The maturity of the company really is very important. Or if you have a founder, sometimes you'll have a founder who's so stuck on their way of thinking. It's like the market, don't make up words. Buyers in the market aren't going to understand what these made up terms are that are internal terminology. Like, call it what it is. And it's okay if the product has sort of some different, you know, naming to it, but don't market with made up things. People will not understand what that is.
Yeah, I like to. This takes me back to the Andy Ruskin strategic narrative, and the second point, which is actually name the change, right? But there's one sentence that I think people are missing out when they read through it and try to implement is make sure that this is the change that your customer understand, that is bigger than you, bigger than anything that's happening, like COVID pandemic or a bigger change that is non-obvious. It's not like, you know, what happened to you or in your body and you decided to create a product to solve that problem, right? It's totally different.
Well, that brings up research. I mean, again, as I said earlier, I've worked with founders who are like seed stage, barely have an idea, and they're building something in a vacuum without having proof that that's actually wanted. Like, somebody will pay you for that. So I think there's a humility aspect that comes into, you know, depending on where, or even if you're a mature company and you want to build something new, is anybody going to buy it? Do you want to invest in that, or is it going to be a big waste? That's hard, but that means you just have to get into the shoes of the user. And that's one of the things that I see that's a gap often, that the idea of the product, to your point, maybe two friends had a pain point, so they want to build something. You actually have to look at the full picture of what the customer is doing outside of that one pain point to really understand if what you're going to build is going to be helpful or not. Otherwise, you're just going to build something and nobody will ever buy it, and you will lose lots of money and be very sad. But I like to sit and see the whole picture, not just my product ideas, to see if it fits into some things that they actually need. And I think that's important, because if you don't understand everything that they are doing, you can't build for just one thing that they may or may not need.
Exactly. So is that the right starting point to talk about more about, aligning product value and go-to-market messaging? Like customer research, talking to the customers, getting those insights from that one perspective, and then, maybe us as a team and the product that we are building, who we are, and, from our standpoint, who are we building it for?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, product value starts with customer need. So I could build a product that would paint my house for me, something really basic there. But if my house doesn't need to be painted, I would never buy it. So I think really, and I was doing some chats with some new founders last week. They said, we have an idea, but we don't know how to go find people to talk about if they would buy this or not. In this particular instance, it was not, it was a B2C type product, but it was for underwater tiny houses for scuba divers. Totally random thing here. But they went and I gave them the advice. There are forums, there are places online where people talk about this type of niche need, or the same thing with a B2B problem. You can reach out, and there are places that people, whether it's LinkedIn groups, Reddit has lots of conversations of things you can listen in on. Go find where conversations are happening, and then start and reach out to people to see if they're willing to talk to you. Even better, before any code is done, if you have some type of a lightweight prototype, or some sketches in Figma, if you can visualize what you're thinking about, that helps somebody see it come to life. And I think that's far more important, because they may say, that's nice, but if you did X, Y, and Z, you could make that one small course correction and really find the product value, if you are listening. And so I think that's, if you are starting from ground zero, day one, that's the most important thing you can do before you try to get funding or invest. And then once you have customers and there's something new that's changing, I think it's so important that your product, your marketing team, your customer success team have tons of information. When you have a larger organization, tapping into those groups of internal people, or to your actual customer base. If you're very savvy, you can actually go to the deals you lost and find out why you lost, if they're willing to speak with you. So I think taking that extra step of time, you don't have to spend 6 months doing it, but even if you spent a week doing some pre-research before you get started, I think that will help you fine-tune what the product value is, because you're hearing it from the user or from the buyer's perspective, not from your sort of thoughts, and you've been in a vacuum thinking about it for months on end. So I would say that's critically important, because you want to hear other people's opinions, not just form your own.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you said some great things. So there, first one is build a light product, or something that can just, show what the product will look like from your perspective. And I always say, if you cannot sell that, you won't sell the product as well.
Correct.
Because you are selling the vision, what it can be. You start with a simple thing, how it solves one problem, and then basically, you go and you show what are other possibilities, and you build them step by step as you get the insights from your customers.
And you don't have to have a perfect product day one, but you have to at least have a direction that you can explain. And that, when I started my company many, many moons ago, I had one customer that was willing to sit down with us once a month and would just talk about their marketing, talk about their problems. They were almost as much of a partner in what we were crafting and building, but they trusted us because we would come back every other month and show them that we had listened previously. And build things that they were saying, these are helpful to us. And it wasn't that we didn't have our own plan, we did, but they felt invested and they were okay that the product wasn't perfect yet. And they ended up being one of my largest customers overall. So that was growing to, we had 1,800 Facebook pages for all of their restaurants. It was wild.
Damn. Yeah.
Yeah, but that goes back to that product value though. They became social proof. They became like a champion for us because we took the time to do the research. Then we built towards step-by-step solutions for them. And then at that point, they wanted to help us as much as we wanted to help them. So I think when you can find those types of relationships, it that case study probably earned me more business than me creating some spectacular positioning on a website, because it's like going to a great restaurant. Somebody's, oh, the food was amazing. You go, oh, I should check it out. It'd be great. So product value can also come from the voice of others. It doesn't have to just come from your business.
Exactly. That's so true. You reminded me now of a thing. I almost forgot about it. Like early days in my career, I mean, in first 13 months in the agency, I became the first GM. So I didn't have that many, early days, but we had a client who was with the agency for a couple of years. They become friends, and basically we helped them build another building. It was auto repair shop, and now they opened the dealership in Canada. And the thing was that we actually created a startup with them, which basically the app that helps people awards them for taking care of their car. Right. So it turns out a totally different experience. And then me as a young GM got the experience to be a CMO in a startup in parallel. Right. Sort of from that perspective, always interesting. And I always say, take care of your customers first, or clients, that you are with them, because they are the first one that will connect you to something else.
Correct. And I think also when you have that trust with whether it's 10 customers or 10,000 customers, obviously 10,000 customers, you have to pick and choose who's sort of your trusted group there. But there's ways to even harvest information, surveys, NPS type things, looking at help articles and usage statistics. That tells you if you're finding product market fit at that large of a scale. But I think if you have that relationship, those customers, they will introduce you to others. They will give you ideas that you're not thinking about, because they're using the product in the way that they see how to use it, versus it might not be exactly how you wanted them to use it. And they will be kinder to give you critical feedback versus just blowing smoke, going, oh yeah, it's great. It's like, it's great, but I always want the it's great, but what's the after the but? Because that means something, maybe it's working as they expected it to, but it's clunky, or it's just cumbersome, or it takes too long, or whatever the thing is that comes after that. But that's the sweet spot that can help you. And that's when you start to refine your marketing strategy, because you might be saying it one thing in, coming up for Q1 in 2024, but by the time that first half of the year is over, you need to be shifting and listening, and that positioning can change, or it doesn't have to change dramatically, but it can be fine-tuned to be more about what the problems are. But you have to spend the time to listen. You have to get in there and do that work. So it's a front line. You got to be on the front line with your customer as much as you are back in building and figuring out things internally.
Yeah, one more thing I want to add to the people listening, because usually, people say, we're coming up with this positioning. This is how we're going to make a name for ourselves. This is where we're going to go. And they think of it as something which is definite. And actually, positioning is something that you change, tweak as you grow, as the situation in the market changes, as you changes, as your competitors change. There are a lot of factors that affect it, and it's never definite thing.
That's 100% correct. I was reading an article yesterday about a company that was 480 million annual revenue, but they had stopped innovating 3 years ago and their evaluation is actually dropped, and their competition is just, I can't remember the name of the company, but you are never the same thing you are tomorrow that you are today, just like us as people. The business can change, how you handle customers and support can change, how your sales motion and the way your sales people are talking, if you have a sales organization, if you're product led, how you're introducing that product. What's going to work right now is going to be very different 6 months from now. And so it's okay to evolve. And if you don't evolve, it's going to bite you.
Exactly. And then I look at how we do marketing, like most of the people, and it's the stuff from 20 years ago. So some evolutions take a lot more time to happen.
Can I nitpick on one thing with marketing? With marketing, I never understand why PowerPoints or slides have to change so often, like a format. Like, that's not marketing. That's just making things look pretty for presentations. But I'm like, where's the latest slide deck? I can never find it. So that's my soapbox moment. Sorry.
I love that. I mean, you have this thing related to that, creative is now a differentiator often in campaigns, especially if you're going for, for the awareness stage and targeting the impressions. For example, in the ABM approach, we just want the right companies, the right people from those companies to see the ads. And then if we use the same creative for a long time and the frequency goes above 4 or 5, basically they end up just removing us from the feed, right? So, and there's also something to think about from that perspective.
Oh, we might have just hit on a whole nother topic chain there. So, okay, let's stay there for a second, because I think it's not product management, but it's important because it's go-to-market. Not everything that's built in a product deserves big fanfare. We all know that, right? Because the roadmap is changing. You really need to, like, I as a leader always try to think about the problems that we're trying to solve, not the functionality that's going to solve it. And figuring out a go-to-market strategy for people within your software. So there's the people who use it every day. Those are your, daily, monthly active user base. There's your next audience of your decision makers, who are probably not your monthly active users. They're probably people who are receiving outputs like a report or something of that nature. There's different marketing and problem statements you need to give to those people. And then there's your external, who we are. And then, of course, your prospect marketing. I see often that those all get kind of lumped into one marketing bucket, and they really should be 4 different conversations happening with one core value underneath them. Because a good example for me is within the product, if I want to launch, a guided tutorial for something new that's I want people to know about it that are the users, I may not necessarily need to tell those other 3 audiences about it, right? It could be something that I'm just enabling the users. And so that's back to that conversation between marketing, product marketing, and the product team to understand what deserves, some airtime to each of those audiences. And I don't know if you would agree, but I don't see that done really, really well often.
I agree. I definitely agree.
Fun times. Lots of work.
Yeah, that's definitely true. So let's maybe get into, you've been in a situation to come up with go-to-market strategies a lot of times. And we had a question from Theodora, and maybe we can get into that thing, which actually strategies turn out to be the most successful for you at the specific time. Maybe we can go to that and then connect to, what do you see work nowadays?
I think it goes back to what I was just talking about, is that segmentation has been really effective. And I think video is so underused. I know it's a heavier lift to create it, but we are so it's the TikTok days right now. We are so in tune as humans. Short cupcake-sized content, like small bite-sized
Mm-hmm.
information points. Don't give me 8 minutes of, mumbo jumbo. I'm going to be checked out at 40 seconds. So I think if you have, whether it's a quick video snippet or that really active tutorial for a user, that's one thing that works very successfully. If you then have an overview of sort of the best in class example I can think of is Meltwater actually does this quite well. We would put together every 6 months, almost like a hero overview of the big things we solved. And that was difficult because the product line was huge. There was different buying centers and different packaging. So in my world, I would have a marketing type video of all the big things. And then the secret spot would be the teasers of what was coming next. So I think a great go-to-market is not just retrospective, it's retrospective in value, but also interesting and intriguing of why you're excited about the future.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a really great, and you take that bit of a longer form video and put it into little bite-sized pieces and use those for social content. If TikTok's in your strategy, you can throw it on there. You can have people share it on LinkedIn. But I think that rich media is far more effective. Don't bother with press releases. Nobody reads them. They're noise. I mean, if your company's been purchased, of course, you're going to do a press release. If you've made a major executive hire or an acquisition, you're going to do a press release. But your buyer or your customer is not going to go read the press release. So that would be sort of my best in class is really the interactive go-to-market motions. And then, of course, you can support that with written content like a blog, help articles. From a product management perspective, I'm shocked at the lack of cadence and discipline with release notes. How often things are built and a customer, it's been out there for 6 months and nobody even knows it exists. So shame on us as product people. We're not watching our metrics like we should be. We're not, simple as in your help center, every month, just have the commitment is by the 3rd day of the next month, you just publish the key things that have happened. It doesn't have to be overcomplicated. So there's lots of pieces to all of that, but I lean heavily on that interactive rich media as sort of a best in class. And it's more expensive to build it, but I think it goes much, much further, and it's useful for all of the audiences.
Yeah, I agree. And it's, sort of in a way, which is where we spend time. How do we consume things, right? We are not spending that much time now on Google, on different publication websites and those kind of things. We spend time on social, in smaller communities.
Yeah.
This is where we interact with our peers, with the buyers, and this is where we want to consume the content, right? And then having like a rich media type of content, the way we present what our product is all about, then is actually, being in the right place and giving the right things for the people to consume.
And you have different types of learners or learning styles, right? So I'm a very visual person. I like to see pictures. I like to see interactivity. There's other people who want to read. That's why that concept of maybe it's a blog or those release notes are helpful. Everybody does newsletters. I don't know where you stand on newsletters, if they're that effective. I mean, the open rates most of the time that I've seen with companies I've worked with have been kind of blah. But keep in mind, you have different places and different ways people like to consume things about your company. And so that's why I think it's sort of that strategy of doing several different things that are the most effective ways.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, where I stand on the newsletters is I can use that as an audience for advertising or for something else, most of the time. Sure, I mean, I can use the newsletter and also announce some of the things, but usually what I see all the time, especially for the companies from mid-size to enterprise level, who reacts to the newsletters, who actually reads them, are the people who are a little bit older audience, right? It refers more to them. I don't know why, but that's the kind of when I've been analyzing who's actually reading and responding. Usually it's like that. I don't know. Maybe it was the experience with a couple of companies and products. Maybe it's not, but I see more of a younger audience reacting more on social, commenting on social, coming up on YouTube, like talking about rich media. I think YouTube is a great channel for building a brand and actually answering how to questions and all those things, especially when we have now basically Google search becoming AI chat in the future, and YouTube remains the search engine, right? So but that gets us to the point that you mentioned as well, like how many companies and how many people can actually be entertaining and create the videos that capture attention.
Right. I mean, if the video's boring, you're not going to capture any attention. I think that brings through even in B2B, I would say MailChimp they're spectacular with this. They have so much personality in their content and personality with their engagement. Like B2B marketing, B2B products, we're really boring. I feel like, we're all kind of way behind the curve for what the human element of what we want. I would love to log into softwares and have it be an enjoyable experience that doesn't hurt my eyes, that's consistent, that I know which button to click. If I want to export something, it's called the same names. So I think B2B is a little bit behind in that aspect. It's still really boring, and that leads into marketing as well. So it's okay to have personality. So I think the content, if it has some personality to it, will go much further than some boring voiceover with a big hero graphic.
I mean, yeah, I totally agree, and I think that's where B2B is going, right? We get to the point where we need to meet the customers halfway, interact with them. Like I like to use always the Airbnb and Netflix example, because they don't just give you, Airbnb doesn't just sell you the apartment, right? They give you how to navigate through the city, what to look for outside of it, how you can travel, where you can eat, a lot of different stuff. Netflix, on the other hand, based on what you watched, they give you suggestion what to watch next.
Yep.
And and I see still a lot of especially SaaS companies and B2B tech companies, they just want to get what they want out of the customers, right? Usually it's the contact information and make them a customer and get their money, not to actually give them the value that they need. And you mentioned one thing, and I want to emphasize it, the personality, right? And we see a lot of, I don't know if people listening see also those companies as well. Like there's Lavender, there's I don't know, like Refine Labs, and especially if we go outside of B2B, there's a lot more of them who have the personality, and it's personalized in every single point of it. Like only because we are named Funky Marketing, people, you are, funky, that's kind of things. But that's who we are, right? We are like we like to listen to the funk music, and I always say like funk is the groove that makes you want to move. And basically, I want to focus on not just the awareness, but the middle of the funnel, which makes people take actions. So that's how I define it. And I think B2C, that moment is coming to B2B with emotions, humanity, and actually I hope, I don't know, we're going to see a lot more companies having personality of the founders, of the people working in their company, inside the creative, inside the visuals, inside those kind of things, and not only the people who are in the company, but also the customers.
That's very true. And then I also think with B2B, there is such a technology hangover for users. So, as an example, if I forget what the statistics are, and my dogs might join us just as a heads up here.
That's perfectly well.
They'll bark on in here with their opinions. But if you think about like an average salesperson, we'll just start there. And then maybe I'll jump to a product marketer persona after that. That salesperson is likely touching a CRM system. They're likely touching an email system. They're probably doing some sort of sales enablement if it's, a sales loft or an outreach. Now they've got gongs and choruses of the world that they're looking at. They're in probably a Confluence or a Seismic. They're in a high spot. They're, the list goes on, right? How does the average person keep up with what each of those are unique to help them do their job? Right? It's just their hands are so full of technology. And if we were to build something else to slot into the tech stack, and it's not that different, then you're immediately going to have a churn risk, because if two of the other tools that they're comfortable with do good enough, your sale of that third thing that's kind of average is going to fall off. You might get the deal first, but then it's going to go away. And so I think when you are looking at go-to-market, you also have to take into account what is the different personas that will be touching your product. What are all the other things they are touching as well? And that's just something for you to think about. And I think Airbnb is a good example. They looked at it from the consumer's perspective that said, I'm going to visit a new town. I don't know where to eat, but here's some recommendations. I want to see reviews of what other people who've stayed here and how they feel. And was it clean? Did they like it? Would they go back again? But they also looked at it from the perspective of the landlords or the people who are renting the property, to make it an enjoyable experience for them to interact with people staying at their property, to get paid, to have support. And so that's a good example of, you have sort of B2B because you're trying to get the landlords happy, but you also need to make sure the consumers are happy. And looking at what each of them need uniquely, we don't do that really well as B2B. And I think we should, because that's poor salesperson. They've got so many tools that they're using, or a product marketer, or marketers, or you're then in Marketo and you're over here with something else and content creation systems. And it's a lot. There's a lot of technology. So you have to be thoughtful of everything in the big picture. That was a tangent. Sorry.
No, all is good. And I'm thinking like how many people actually understand the big picture, because I'm not gonna get into that, but I know that somebody who sees the big picture always has this drive because others don't see it, and I'm gonna create the strategy that will exactly show you what I'm seeing, and you're gonna see the same things. And that's actually what I see. A lot of companies separate those winners from those that are just kind of getting along with the things, not seeing the big picture.
Not everybody is a big picture thinker, and that's okay. I mean, that's part of, I think, some of the other questions that came up on LinkedIn. What do successful products have? Successful products have a team around them that collaborate and have cross-functional communication, and focuses on the bigger picture, not just the one little thing that the product does. And that goes all the way from, the CEO across the C-suite. Now, do I expect somebody 2 years out of university who's a customer success manager to understand the big picture? No, that's not their job. That's not their role. But if your executive team doesn't at least have some thought of the bigger picture, I think that you put yourself at a risk of failure. And really great companies understand the marketplace. They understand analyst relations. That's a different thing. If we were talking enterprise, how do you maneuver a Forrester wave? How do you position yourself against competitors? But even just understanding, the day in the life of the customer, that's what I always come back to. You have to see all the things that person is up against and make it delightful for what you're delivering to them to help them.
Yeah, that's so well said. Thank you. And I think this is the moment now that I use in every episode to kind of tell to people, now stop and go back to the beginning of the podcast and listen again, and stop every once in a while, because like Erica shared a lot of great insights. So you would like to go and listen to those things again. But let's go and answer one more thing, which is kind of going back to the startups. And what are 3 top advices for the startups? We can go and personalize that and talk more B2B SaaS, or we can go and take it in general.
I'll keep it general. There might be something B2B specific that pops out. What I mentioned earlier, if you're going back to start at the beginning, you will hear this shortly. That example of the underwater tiny houses, right? Especially something that sort of innovative, do your research. If you don't know who to go speak with, use those online communities, use forums, use Reddit, ask, ask and find out even through LinkedIn if there are people who are interested in it. So I would say before you put a single dollar or line of code together, you have to do some research to make sure you're really actually going to be able to sell something. That's first and foremost. The second piece for startups, and I think this falls for B2C or B2B, onboarding. So when you are building, and everybody's got the buzz terms, we've got PLG motions and all the things. I don't care how product-led you are. If you cannot get a user or a customer quickly into figuring out and starting to adopt your product, they're never going to convert. So often with startups, sort of that, and I had this problem even with my own startup, we handheld the first probably 50 customers, thousands of users. We had trainings and there was so much overhead into getting them to use the product because we didn't invest in productizing the onboarding and training. So as you're starting to get, you can be scrappy the first 10 customers. B2C, you don't have a choice. You're not going to be on the phone with a consumer trying to get them to use your mobile app. They need to be able to use it like immediately. So that would be my second one. And it's often overlooked, we'll just throw people at it in B2B for sure. And then thirdly, I think humility. So if you're a founder or a group of co-founders and you're working together, you need humility that maybe you don't have the right skill sets. Maybe you're very technical, but you don't really understand how to talk to the market. Maybe you're having those customer conversations or potential conversations about things that you're building towards, and you get the head shakes like, no, what? I don't understand that. Change course. It's okay. What is Slack? Wasn't Slack started off as something completely different than the collaboration tool that it is now? I can't remember off the top of my head what it was purposeful at the beginning, but that's a great example of it's completely not what those founders had thought. So being able to say, okay, my idea wasn't quite right, and listen to feedback. You can use intuition for sure, but you have to complement that with feedback as well. So one or the other, it's really not great. You need to have a nice blend of both.
Love that. That's so well said. And some of the things I didn't expect, like the first thing that you said, I didn't expect that to be in those advices for the startup. So that's lovely to hear. Tell me one thing before we slowly get to the end of the episode, which is how do you see the future? What's next for you?
Oh, that's great. That's a fun one. So I've been doing heavy consulting for about 6 months now, and I'm actively looking for a new full-time role or advisories on boards and things of that nature. So I don't think I have it in me to go do a startup of my own again. I have a child going to university next year, but I'm itchy to solve some business problems. I haven't quite figured out where I want to land for home, but right now I'll just continue to work with companies that need some advisement and some help. But I'm actively hunting for a new spot for me to put my stamp on and make some change and help drive some growth in a business.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I mean, guys, if you're listening to this and you are the one whom I use an experienced person who is not only just the marketer or the product, but much more than that. I mean, go ahead and reach out to Erica, and Erica, tell them where can they find more information about you. Not only to, if they need to, to work with you, but also, to engage, to kind of, if they hear something, they need more advice, whatever it is.
So I'm super active on LinkedIn. So you can definitely find me, Erica Jenkins, on LinkedIn. So to take a look, I'm wide open and available there. If you want to drop me an email, it is Erica Jenkins Consulting at Gmail. And that's sort of the direct line. If you spam me, I'm going to block you. Don't add me to your newsletter unprompted, please. But those are the two best ways for people to find me right now.
Sounds good. Sounds good. I'm listening to you, and I'm like, because I'm kind of in the middle of sure, I'm going to accept a couple of more fractional CMO roles. I usually go with 2 per year because usually it's a year engagement. But starting to think, if I find the right fit, maybe I want to go in-house as well and work on some things long term, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, it's nice to feel part of a team where you know what the longer term strategy versus fractional or coming in as an advisor. You get your hands dirty a little bit, but you're not right into the deep of the culture. So it's a little bit, there's pros and cons to both, but if I'm the same, if the right fit shows up, great leadership, great culture, I'm willing to go for it again.
Exactly. I mean, one thing I learned as a fractional CMO is with which companies I don't want to work. So, that helps.
This is not somewhere I would want to go. That's very, very good point.
Exactly. Okay, guys, thank you for being with us for another episode. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Don't forget to subscribe. I often forget to tell you this, but go subscribe, follow Funky Marketing Podcast on YouTube, on all the audio platforms. I don't know where you are listening or watching. Go connect with Erica. And as I always say, keep it funky. Erica, thank you for being with us and thank you for sharing all the insights. And I'm sure we'll repeat that in the next months.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for being with us. Bye-bye.